Dav Kuf Chaf Dalin Amid Aleph will begin Kuf Chaf Gimel Amid Beis, 4 lines from the bottom. We are in the middle of a discussion about the Gzera of Muksa, the Takana that Nehemiah made. At his time, the people were very lax in Shmir Shabbos, so they made many restrictions on Muksa. And they only were matir a very limited amount of kalim, and generally even a kli that's malach leheter was still Muksa. Later on, they relaxed it in stages, the restrictions on Muksa. But at that time, there were many restrictions, and very few kalim were mutter. Generally speaking, only those that were necessary for daily use, for eating utensils, etc. But otherwise, most of the kalim, even those were malach leheter, were also also. All these cases, which we'll see, which the more we'll bring these cases, the case of the tubes and the sticks and the knob and the mortar, kulam koidim hatoras kalim nishnu. These were all taught before they were matir, the kalim in general. At the stage of the takana of Nehemiah, when there was restrictions on even kalim, which were malach leheter. What are these cases? Konim. What's the case of the konim? Disnan leisira konim v'loin tilasan b'echas Shabbos. In the Beis Hamikdash on the shulchan, they had the lechem upon him, 2 rows of 6 each, total of 12. The bottom row was on the shulchan itself. The bottom row of the lechem was on the shulchan, but then as it was stacked up, it had tubes that were inserted between the vertical pillars, and they had tubes where the loaves rested on those tubes. And they did it so that the loaves would not rest on each other, it might become moldy. Now, even though that there was a nace in the lechem upon him, that was cham, it was, when they removed it, it was hot and warm, just as they were when they put it on the shulchan. Nevertheless, ain't same chal. And nace, as Rashi says, and therefore they inserted these tubes to elevate the loaves, to elevate the lechem, and that there would be air circulating between the loaves, and so that it would not get moldy. Now on Shabbos, they did not permit the use of those tubes. They didn't permit the use of the tubes, and they stacked the lechem one on top of the other, and the Motzei Shabbos, they would insert the tubes. So on Erev Shabbos, they removed the tubes, and then the loaves were stacked on each other. Shabbos morning, they removed the last week's lechem and put in the new lechem upon him and stacked it on top of each other. Motzei Shabbos, they inserted the tubes. Now, these tubes are klishim lach leheter. So why would it be on Shabbos? Why would they also doing it? It must be that this was nishnis, this was taught in the early stages of the time of Nehemiah, when there was restrictions even on a kli that's malach leheter, and therefore it was also al muksa. So he points out, even though normally we ain't goes of shus b'mikdash, in the Beis Hamikdash we don't, but there are exceptions, and he said because the level of Shmir Shabbos was so weak at that time, and they had to reinforce and strengthen it, they made this takana, the shus, even in the mikdash. So, however, l'chera, this must have been nishnis at koidem the hatara before they were matir klishim lach leheter. Maklas, what's the case of the sticks? This non-maklas dakin achalokim hayusham umenichem al kseifish val kosiv chavera v'taylu mavshit. When the Yud Daled Nisan, when they brought the Korban Pesach, now normally when they had the Korban, they had to be mashed the Korban, they had posts and hooks, and they suspended the animals, and they were able to be mashed the or. But on Yud Daled, when it was brought the Korban Pesach, on Yud Daled Nisan, there were so many korbanos that had to be brought, so they didn't have enough of the hooks and the posts to be mashit the korbanos. What did they do? They brought sticks and they put it on one person on his shoulder and the other person on another person's shoulder, and they suspended the animal. They be mashit, they skinned the animal in that manner. But Amar Rabbi Lazar Amar Arba also Shechaliyas b'Shabbos. If you dull and Nisan fell out on Shabbos, then they didn't use the sticks. The sticks were muksa. What did they do? Maniach yoda al kalsev chaver v'yad chaver al kseifa to mavshe. Instead of using sticks, they used their arms. They put one arm on his friend's shoulder, and his friend put his arm on his shoulder, and they would suspend the animal and skin it, and that way they would be mavshe. So again, you see, even though these sticks were klisha malach leheter, were used for the use of Hofstedter, which was mutter, nevertheless, they answered it on Shabbos. It must be that was at the time of the Gzera of Nehemiah. Glustra. What's the case of the knob? This knob, nagar sheish b'roisha glustra, a bolt that has a knob on its end. So they had a bolts that they used to secure the doorways, that the door that it should be secure in its place. And it was tied with a rope, and it was put into a hole in the threshold that held the door in place. Sometimes it has a knob at the end. Sometimes it's used as a pestle to grind food, spices, etc. So this type of nagar, Rav Yeshua says you can't carry it in the normal way. You can only drag it from one door to another door. It can only be dragged, but it can't be used in the normal way. So you see, therefore, that even though this is a kli shemalach leheter, nevertheless it's also. So it must be that it's before hator kelim. Rav Tarfon says no, you can carry it in the normal way. You can carry it in the normal way. Taisa says because it has regular use, and it's sometimes even used for food. So Taisa says that this is considered like kaisis and karas that were not included in Nehemiah's Gzera. But Akoponim Yeshua does answer, it must be that this was before the heter of the kelim. And meducha, the case of the mortar, hadama, that we said before that it's only mutter if it has the garlic in it. So otherwise it's not. So you see that it is considered, it's also, even if it's sarach gufa mekayma, it's also must be before the heter for gufa mekayma. Amar Rabba, what's your raya that this is before the heter, that it's the time of the Gzera of maybe I'll tell you it was even after the heter. And konim time and why? So then why should the konim be also? Why should it be also why didn't they put the konim and remove and put the konim on by the lechem upon him? Because what is the reason that they use the tubes? Konim time and they be used mishum mifusha. They only put the tubes there because so that the lechem upon him, the bread, should not get moldy. It's only a short period of time until that the bread is resting one on the other without the tubes, and in that short period of time, we're not worried, we're not chayshish for it becoming moldy. So there's no reason for it. So therefore, they weren't matriach. They didn't do this tircha if there was no reason. Makla is what about for the korban pesach, the sticks? After the maybe I'll tell you that it's not because of the muksa. If it was needed, it would be allowed, but it's after kirolazar, and therefore they could use their arms. There was no need for it, and therefore they didn't use it. It was shalei l'tzarach. Glustrum, in the case of the knob, maybe I'll tell you Kirav that it's not really a muksadika issue over here. The issue over here is really carrying, and we're talking where there was no eruv in the chotzim. The Oma Rabbi Yana b'Chotzer Shein Mu'reves Askina. We're talking in a case where the Chotzer did not have an eruv. Therefore, it's also to carry in the Chotzer kalim that were in the house on the onset of Shabbos, kalim that were in the house before Shabbos came in, and to take those from the house to the Chotzer and carry it in the Chotzer is also. So therefore, what's the machlokes? Rabbi Yeshua Savatayach Pascal of Nimta. Rabbi Yeshua holds that that's what's in the doorway. The kalim that are in the doorway are considered in the house. So therefore, to take this and carry it into the chotzer, that would be carrying from the house through the chotzer. And if there's no eruv, it's also the kamataltel mana the bottom of chotzer, and it comes out that he's carrying a kli that was in the house in the chotzer without an erev, it's also. So therefore, it can only be dragged. Now, why can it be dragged? Even dragging is also to take kelim from a house and carry it in a chotzer that doesn't have an erev. Even through dragging, that's also. So the Ran says because over here they were more mekel, since it's only tiltul minatzad, it's an indirect way that he's carrying it, and it looks like it's a kli that was in the chaser. It looks like it because it's facing the chaser. It looks like one of the kelim in the chaser. Here they were more mekel for this case. And Rav Tarfon holds, however, that he holds toich hapesel kol chutz dami. He holds that no, even though it's in the doorway, it's considered part of kechutz outside in the chaser. So it's like a kli that was in the chaser on the onset of Shabbos, which you could carry without an erev. And that's the machlekes. The man of the chaser b'chaser kamataltel, so it's mutar. And meducha in the case of the mortar, what's your raya? Maybe Rabbi Nechemyahi. And maybe, like we learned earlier, that's really going according to the shita of Nechemya, who holds the enkli nittel el sorach davar nittel. Even a kli that's mutar, you can only use it for its normal purpose. So therefore, you can't use the meducha for a different purpose. A kli can only be used for its normal use on Shabbos, and the meducha is used for crushing and grinding, which can't be used for Shabbos, can't be done on Shabbos, so you can't use it for any other use either. But maybe I'll really tell you that all of these cases are talking after the Hatorah that you're matir the kelim. So we're now talking about Reb Nechemya, the sheet of Reb Nechemya, and that is the discussion in the following Mishnah. Zok the Mishnah, kol kelim nitalim letzorach shaloi letzorach. All the kelim can be taken whether they need it for necessity or not. As it's clear from the Gemara coming up that when we're talking about it, kol kelim nitalim letzorach shaloi letzorach means kelim which are malachton leheter. Kelim which are malachton leheter can be taken for necessity or not necessity. They can only be taken out of necessity of Nechemya, the sheet of Nechemya, that and kelim are only nitol letzorach tashmish, and only for their designated use. So we'll see in the Gemara, there's a machlekes in my roim how to define this. So like the Gemara, what does it mean that it can be taken for necessity or not? Alma Rabba says letzorach. When he says letzorach means gufa. It means letzorach gufa if you need the utensil itself. Shaloi letzorach, shaloi letzorach, davar shemalach leheter, letzorach mekayim. As a davar shemalach leheter, even if you don't need the item itself, you need the place of the item. The davar shemalach liyisur, but a davar shemalach letzorach gufa in letzorach mekayim aloi. A kli shemalach liyisur is only mutar letzorach guf, but not letzorach mekayim. That's the shita of Rava. Also, Rav Nechemya l'meima, afilu davar shemalach leheter letzorach gufa in letzorach mekayim aloi. And Rav Nechemya is saying even a kli shemalach leheter, it's only mutar letzorach gufa, but not letzorach mekayim. Omerlei Rava, Rava says letzorach mekayim shalei letzorach karetzlei. Rava, like we learned before, Rava said there's no real distinction between letzorach gufa and letzorach mekayim. They're really one and the same. If it's tzorach gufa, tzorach mekayim, it's still called a tzorach. You need it. You need it. You need the place of it. You need the item itself. Therefore, he says, "Alam arava l'tzorach davar shemalach leheter ben letzorach gufa ben letzorach mekayim." Rava says when we say l'tzorach, it's a kli shemalach leheter ben letzorach gufa ben letzorach mekayim. Shaloi letzorach. What do we mean by shaloi letzorach? Va'afil lechamal letzorach. Even if you don't need the item, you don't need its place, you're just moving it because you want to protect the item. Mecham itself from the sun to the shade, that's also permitted. V'davar shemalach l'yisur, akli shemalach l'yisur, l'tzarach gufa l'tzarach mekayim in mecham l'tzel. But akli shemalach l'yisur, mecham l'tzel is also, but mekayim is mutter. Also, Nechemya l'meira, davar shemalach leheter, l'tzarach gufa l'tzarach mekayim in mecham l'tzel. And Nechemya comes to say that even a davar shemalach leheter, it's only tzorach gufa and l'kaima. But mecham l'tzel is also. But according to Rava, and there's 2 points where he argues with Rabbah. He says, number one, that a kli shemalachta l'isser is mutar l'tzarech mekaymai, and he says, according to Nehemiah, that a kli shemalachta l'heter l'tzarech gufa l'tzarech mekaymai, they're both mutar. That it's mutar, and according to Nehemiah, both by chamal itzel is also, but both gufa mekaymai is a mutar. But Rabbah said that according to Nehemiah, it's only tzarech gufa, not l'tzarech mekaymai. Yosef Rasafer Vachabarhuna Ravana Barchanina Yosef Kamre Lirabba Libidra Nehemiah Hane Ka'aras Metaltilinan. So they asked, bowls, how can you metaltal the bowls, the utensils that you use at the table for eating? How can you metaltal them? If you're telling me, according to Rabbah, it's only Tzorach Gufa, but not Tzorach Mekaima, when you finished eating, how can you clear the table? It's considered like a grashel ray, just like a grashel ray, that a person is allowed to move it because of kavod abrius. They allow the person to remove the excrement because it's kavod abrius. Here also, this is a special heter mishum kavod abrius. The Rishonim are medayek that the kasha seems to be only according to Rabbah. But according to Rava, there's no problem on how you can clear the table because you need a tzarech mekaymai. But even if you need a tzarech mekaymai, you only need it to clear the table. What allows you to continue carrying it and put it away, put it in the sink, put it in the cupboard? How can you continue once you've cleared the table? Why shouldn't you be required to immediately put it down? So they therefore are medayek and say that once you have a heter to be metaltal the muksa, like over here, there's a heter, the tzarech mekaima, then you're allowed to take it to the place that you want to put it to. You don't have to put it down. Once, if you have a heter to pick it up initially, you can continue taking it to the place you wanted to put it down. The same kind of discussion that we just had. Amalei Rasafra Chavan Tirgema, there are a Chaver or Metargimen, Midun Hava Grashel Rei, Bishum Kavod Abrius. Esei by Larava, Meducha, Yesh Bashum Metalton, Isam, Vlavin Metalton, Isa. He says the Meducha, if it has garlic, you can be talked, but if not, you can't. Our answer is similarly, Achamai Skin and Mechama Litzel. It's talking about Mechama Litzel. Abai asked another question. He asked another question. Rava Vishavin, Beis Shama, and Beis Hillel agree. Shim Kitzavala Basa Shosula Taltala. That if he already chopped meat on it, it's also to be metaltal the pestle. Then it's considered to be already dover muksa, and he cannot be metaltal. So, according to Rabbah, he can say that it's considered muksa where he doesn't need the pestle itself. He only needs the malkum. He only needs the malkum of it, and then he holds the shitasa, the l'tzarech mekaima. It's also, but he doesn't need the pestle. So therefore, it's muksa. It's also l'taltal. But according to Rava, you hold that it's mutar l'tzarech mekaima. So why is it also, even if he already chopped on with it? Why is it also? Our answer is we're talking about he doesn't need it legufa, he doesn't need the mekaima, he just wants to remove it from the sun to the shade to protect it. So therefore it's also l'taltla. We learned in the Mishnah because that on Yom Tov you can't support a pot with a piece of wood to make it level, to make it sturdy and support it. It's also v'chein bedelas, and a door also you can't support it with a piece of wood. But because davar shemalachta leheter, a piece of wood on Yom Tov is a davar shemalachta leheter. It's mutter to burn on Yom Tov, to cook on Yom Tov. So the piece of wood is malachta leheter. Alma, don't you see from here? Davar shemalachta leheter, ben l'tzarech gufa, ben l'tzarech mekaima. Also, don't you see over here that a davar shemalachta leheter, whether it's l'tzarech gufa or mekaima, it's also because this is l'tzarech gufa over here. If it's also l'tzarech gufa, certainly l'tzarech mekaima, and you see over here that it's also. So this is a kasha both on Rava and Rava as well. Your answer is Hossam, my time, what is the reason over the Isser over there? No, it's a Dover Shemalach Heter. It should be Mutter. It's a special reason over there, is because came in the B'Shabbos Dover Shemalach Isser, who, since this piece of wood on Shabbos, it's Malach Isser, because you can't burn wood on Shabbos. It's Yontav to Shabbos. So we're geyser on Yontav to answer it because of Shabbos. Maybe you'll ask and say Shabbos Gufa Tishtari. Maybe it should be mutter. Why should it be also on Shabbos? Even if it is a Kli Shemalach or a Dover Shemalach rather, but we say that L'Sorach Gufa Mekayim is mutter. So therefore, why shouldn't it be mutter on Shabbos? More answers Hey Chadikater's Kliol. That's only when it has a teres kli. Then we say it's a kli shemalach dalisr, but this, a piece of wood, is not a kli. So it's muksa machmas gufay. And a muksa machmas gufa, where it's not a kli, there's no heter l'sorach gufa u'mekayim. Frek the Gemara migazrina. Are we geyser on Yontav Shabbos? V'atanan, we learned in the Mishnah, Meshilim Peres De'acharubi Yontav. We can lower peiros, fruit, through a skylight, and we can on Yontiv Avaloi b'Shabbos. We allow the tircha on Yontiv, but not Shabbos. There's a hefsid. If he leaves it on the roof, it'll get ruined. And we allow to do it on Yontiv, not on Shabbos. So you see, we make a chiluk between Shabbos and Yontiv. You see, we're not geyser on Yontiv out to Shabbos. In fact, the more meat loy gazrinan. But we see we are geyser v'atanan ein ben Yontiv l'Shabbos haloichel nefesh bilvad. We see that there's no chiluk between Yontiv and Shabbos, only oichel nefesh. That's the only chiluk between them. It's oichel nefesh. Other than that, there's no chiluk. So you see that in other respects, in all other respects, that they're the same. So we are geyser. So it seems to be a contradiction. Omer Rav Yosef loikasha, ha Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yeshua. We'll answer it based on one is going with according to the sheet of Rabbi Eliezer, and one is Rabbi Yeshua. We see there's a machlokes if we're mekel mishum hefsid moment if we're mekel. The time we learned oisev espionation of a boar if an animal and its child fell into a bore, so of course you can't shech oisev espionai b'yaimecha. They can't be shech on the same day. Rabbi Eliezer aimer malas harishon manas sheikh the sheikh. Rabbi Eliezer says you take up the first one, almanas l'sheich v'sheich. You can't take them both up. You can only shecht one, so you can only be matriach on Yontev for one of them. You take one of them up, you shecht it on Yontev. The second one you have to leave over there. You can't lift it up, and you feed it over there. You throw food to it so that it doesn't die, but you can't take it up. Rabbi Yeshua says you can do aroma. You can take up one of them, and with the intent to shecht it, then you examine it and say, no, maybe the second one is better. Maybe the second one's fatter. So, and you don't shecht the first one, and umaru mala es hasheni, and then you do aroma, and you take the second one up, and rotzah zeh sheich, and it's shecht, which either one you want. So you see that he holds, that Rabbi Yeshua holds, that we can make a aroma because of a possible loss of hefsid moment. We allow him to do this kind of a tircha. So let us resolve the two cases by saying that we say by we make a chilek between Yontav and Shabbos by Mashil and Peiros. That is Rabbi Yeshua is mekel mishum hefsid moment. On Yontav he's mekel hefsid moment. And the mission that says that ein bein Yontav Shabbos halaychol nefesh bilvad is going according to Rabbi Eliezer. Frag the Gemara mimai. How can you say that Dilmad kan loikam Rabbi Eliezer Hasam? Maybe he only said it there. Eladav shel. That's only because he can feed the second animal in the bore. It's not going to be such a certain definite loss of money. It'd be better if he could pick it up, but he can feed it in the bore. But where it's lo yafshel parnosa, in the case of the mashil of the Paris on the rooftop, where if it's going to be exposed over there, it's going to cause a damage. He's going to suffer a loss. Then he would allow you to put it down to lower it down. And inami adkan loikam Rav Yeshua Hasam, and Alternatively, even though we see that Rav Yeshua is mekel over there by Oisav Es Benoi, why is he mekel? Because it's Efsheh B'Haroma. Efsheh B'Haroma, he can make this kind of trick so it doesn't look clearly like he's being matriach, and there's no such a zilzal in Yontav, because it doesn't look like he's being matriach for Parnasa on Yontav. Efsheh B'Haroma loy. But if it's Efsheh B'Haroma loy, Elamar Papa Lekasha Habeis Shammai Habeis Hillel. How can we resolve the steer between the Mishnayos? Beis Shammai Beis Hillel. What's Beis Shammai Beis Hillel? This non Beis Shammai. Beis Shammai says that ein amod might see in this akotam there's a little vessel sefer Torah Lishus Rabim. He says that you cannot take a cotton, a child, a lulav or a sefer Torah. You can't take it onto the Rishus Rabim. Even on Yontav, you can't take it out. So Beis Shammai Aser is carrying on Yontav. Or Beis Hillel Matir. And Beis Hillel says it's mutter. So meaning, what do we see over here? That we see that there is a chilek according to Beis Hillel between Yontav and Shabbos. The Mishnah says Ein bein Yontav l'Shabbos aloichel nefesh bilvad is Beis Shammai. Because you see clearly over here that Beis Hillel is mechalek between Yontav and Shabbos. They're matir carrying on Yontav, even if it's not l'tzarech ha'echol nefesh. They're allowed carrying a cotton, lulav, a sefer Torah on Yontav, not Shabbos. So that Mishnah that says ein bein Yontav l'Shabbos, ein bein Shabbos l'Yontav l'echol nefesh b'lvad, that's Beis Shammai. The Mishnah of Mashilim that makes a chilik between Shabbos and Yontav is Beis Hillel. While we see that, yes, by Haitzah, they do make a chilik tiltul mishamad lei, but regarding Muksa, did you see that there is a chilik l'gabi Muksa? Where it says, tiltul gufa la mishum Haitzah, isn't tiltul mishum Haitzah? When Nehemiah saw that there was a zilzul in Shmiras Shabbos, that people were not careful in Shmiras Shabbos, what did he see that they were doing? They were carrying. So we're guys around Muksa, meaning that part of the Gzeira of Muksa is not to be metaltal items, even in the Rishus HaYachid, even in one's house, because he might come to carry it. So it's all part and parcel of carrying. So we see that Beis Hillel makes a chilik between Shabbos and Yontav as far as carrying goes, so they'll make a chilik as far as also of tiltul. Beis Shammai says that there's no chilik between Shabbos and Yontav as far as I saw. They similarly won't make a chilik as far as tiltul.